something we try to advocate along the way. Always bear in mind that Jesus is the way. Okay? There are no beatitudes that say, "Blessed are they who have the correct beliefs." Okay? All of Christianity today seems to be oriented around who has correct beliefs. Are your beliefs correct, or are their beliefs correct? It's either that or people don't care at all. It's like, do you have any good programs for the kids? Which is not an illegitimate concern. But there's people orienting and optimizing for different things. There is no beatitude that says, "Blessed are they who have the correct beliefs." Jesus is the way. And when we on this channel look at Jesus, we look at Jesus as the way. Like, how do I navigate the river successfully? How do I flow with it? So you have to, even though you have a destination you're trying to get to, you also have to know when to give in to the river, because there are certain ways in which flowing water has no mercy. And as long as you know what those are and you can flow with it, you can work with the river to get where you want to go. We'll talk more about that in a few minutes. So following Jesus was never regarded in the New Testament as a group of people who have correct beliefs. It was always referred to as a way. Okay, in the East they use the word Tao, and that's scary because we think it's some sort of, antithetical to Christianity religion who has different beliefs. But that's not the right way to look at it. The right way to look at it is that, in Acts 17, if happily they might feel after him, they were on to something. They were on to something. They knew that Taoism at least understands that the right way to be has something to do with the way. What they didn't know is that Jesus is the way. That's the only information that they lacked. Okay? And that's the pinnacle. That's the one missing piece. So Jesus shows up. He is the way. So that fills that in. And one of the ways to look at other religions is not so much as competing sets of beliefs that disagree with each other, but rather fellow human beings just like you and me, who, just like Acts 17 says, were feeling after God as best they could based on what they knew. Psalm 19, Romans 1. And then Jesus shows up to tell all of them, everybody, hey, I'm what you're looking for. I'm what you were looking for the whole time. And if you can see different philosophies and different religions as predecessors to the arrival of Messiah. And I think that's a healthy, fun, and good way to look at things. And I think that's the right way to look at things. Don't get so caught up in competing sets of beliefs. What we're trying to do is trying to find the way. What is the way of reality? Okay. Also, something we like to emphasize is the fact that in Scripture, obviously from Jesus, if you've ever read the book of John or the epistles of John, love is emphasized above everything else. But also Paul emphasizes love. It's called charity here, but it's still agape, above everything else. Above all these things, put on charity, which is the bond of perfectness. Owe no man anything to love one another. A love is the fulfilling of the law. So these are things that we like to bear in mind as we move forward through anything that we find in the New Testament, right? So today we are looking at this Matthew chapter 5, verse 6. And this is the fourth beatitude. And Jesus says, "Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled." And the little comment that I have over here is appropriateness and attunement, not rule following. When I was an independent Baptist, or even a Southern Baptist, or even pastoring New Orleans Bible Church, which was technically non-denominational, but every pastor they had before me was a graduate of Dallas Theological Seminary. They were basically a Baptist church. So when I was back in that world, when I would see this verse, I would think righteousness was some kind of correctness, like having correct beliefs and doing correct and right things like rule following, following rules, having like the Ten Commandments, like doing the things you should do, not doing the things that you shouldn't do, and you're constantly ever increasing in your capacity to be aligned with all the right rules, and that's what righteousness was. Well, I got a wake-up call. That's not what Christ has in mind here. If that was the case, if rule following was what was in mind, you would not have to hunger and thirst after it. Okay? Now, also what I would do in that mindset as an independent Baptist is I would think, oh, righteousness, that's a buzzword. I have a doctrine for that. Look, I have a doctrine for righteousness, and what that is I don't have any of my own righteousness. My righteousness is imputed from God after I have faith in Jesus Christ. So then I would be able to dismiss this verse under a doctrine of imputed righteousness to where I no longer have to hunger and thirst for righteousness. So I would think that hungering and thirsting for righteousness would be like a lost person. Then they would find Jesus, they would get imputed righteousness, and bam, that's the end of that endeavor. That has been fulfilled, and now we no longer need to concern ourselves with any effort with regard to Matthew 5:6, the fourth beatitude, blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness. So that's the way I would think of it. And when you go later in the book of Matthew, and it says, to accept your righteousness shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, I would think that, oh, well, the only way you can do that is through Christ's imputed righteousness. Okay? That's the way I would think. And from one aspect, of course, I'm not negating that, but that's not what Jesus has in mind here. To hunger and thirst after righteousness is a hunger and thirsting after rightness, not in the sense of being right or correct with your doctrines and dogmas or rule following, but in the sense of what's appropriate and what's an attunement. Okay? So it helps sometimes to step away from the religious world and look at other domains, because the scandal of the particular. As soon as I try to say something that's in the religious domain, people will object to it for a variety of reasons. Last week we talked about a dance. Now, if you hunger and thirst, now notice that here, when we were talking about meekness, in order for this dance to occur, now of course these are different dances, but you get the idea that this dance partner, this guy is lifting his dance partner, and he's using a great deal of strength and finesse and training, stability, balance, elegance, flow. He's using all kinds of different skill components, procedural skill components, in order to do these dance moves and lift this other person, so that this other person can trust the strength and the direction and the guidance and all this, and that you're not going to, get clobbered by the floor eventually. Now, what would hungering and thirsting after righteousness in this situation be? It would be the appropriate amount of force at the right place, at the right time. Being in attunement with your surroundings, with the floor, with the boundaries. You don't want to run into the wall or into any spectators or anything. And with your partner, being in attunement with your partner. Where is the center of gravity on my partner? And if I lift my partner holding her in the wrong place, she will fall, we will both go tumbling. And so there must be an appropriateness and an attunement for the sake of the dance, for the dance to occur. And this, you could also think of, you could have a dance that is very choreographed. One of the things my wife and I have enjoyed seeing recently is there's these, I don't know what the situation is, but they pick two random partners. They already know how to dance, but they have to do a partner dance to music that is spontaneously picked for them, and they've never rehearsed together. So it's kind of like jazz. It's improvisation while you're also doing this. And so the need to hunger and thirst for appropriateness and attunement in that improvised situation, impromptu situation, is even greater than one in which you have practiced choreography. Another way to look at this would be a surfer. You know, a surfer, you're having to balance so many things. You're having to be in attunement. This no wave is exactly like any other wave. And so there is no set of exact rules. You can't pre-specify relevance for exactly how to surf a wave. But after you've tried to surf maybe a few hundred of them, you get kind of pretty good at it. And you have to be able to keep your balance on the board, hold the board against the water, understand the flow of the water, and be in synchronization with all that. Be in attunement with all of that in order for the surfing to occur as you wish it to occur. So there is appropriateness and attunement based on what you're trying to do. Based on what you're trying to do, what you're aiming for. All right? So if you're surfing, you might just be trying to surf the wave. If you're dancing, the sake of the dance is the case. What are you trying to do? In one sense, the consciousness of the cosmos is living through you, looking through you like its own VR headset. And that's the point of it as far as that's concerned. But as far as you are concerned, you're aiming at something. Ideally, you're aiming at a better you. There's a Kevin that's a year down the road from me or 5 years down the road from me that is better and improved in some ways than this version of Kevin. And I'm pressing and aiming toward that, trying to define it, constantly recalibrating as I go. What is that? What does that look like? And I think different metrics that I don't know if I put it in this slide deck, but I have different metrics that I would recommend using. So when we talk about attunement, we're talking about the 4 kinds of knowing. Different kinds of knowing have different claims on different things. And so the kind of knowing that we're most familiar with in left hemisphere America is propositional claims on truth. We semantically disambiguate a bunch of words that are supposed to point at something. Now in the real world, most of what we say, like nothing that you think is real. And one of the journeys of spirituality is to train yourself to learn to pay attention to your experience, okay? This is very important in light of Romans chapter 5, verses 3 through 5, because the inclusion of tribulation, patience, experience, hope, resulting in the love of God being shed abroad in your heart. If you do not properly attend to your tribulation with patience and to your experience, okay, that you can't just add a bunch of propositional data together and get perception of truth. Now, I'm saying perception of truth on purpose because a lot of us wave our Bibles around. They're like, I have truth, and I have it in having mode. Problem is, even if absolute truth is absolutely there and it's contained in the Bible, you cannot perceive it because you do not have the requisite amount of transformation in order to perceive it. So we have a certain perception of truth, which will never be the full absolute truth which we moralistically claim to believe in. We think people say this like they're morally superior for believing in some kind of absolute truth even though they can't perceive it. Well, since you can't perceive it, I would not concern myself too much with it. I would concern yourself with what you can perceive and grow to where you can perceive more. Procedural knowing claims on power, like how to throw a baseball. I can do something well. I can pass a law through Congress. I can throw a football. I can catch a football. Perspectival knowing is claiming on having an optimal grip of a scenario. Like you can combine multiple perspectives and operate as if you have embodied all of those multiple perspectives. And then there's participatory knowing, which is the deepest kind of knowing and the first kind of knowing that you experience as a baby. And that's when you increase capacity in participatory knowing, this is claims on attunement with the arena.